So let's have a look at the type of adjustments that you may want to put through at year end. And these include just normal journal adjustments, adjustments to close books. You might have compliance and or tax adjustments and any entries that you might want to process for user-defined books. So we're going to touch on user-defined books as well. I've mentioned GL journal adjustments, so you can process any journal adjustment you like in the system up until the time that you close the general ledger. Once the general ledger is closed, you have to use what we call an adjustment journal, and I'll touch on that. You've also then got compliance journals, so you might need to do gap accounting of some sort or for any other foreign accounting, and you've got compliance adjustments you might need to make, so you can set up journals to do that. And likewise, you can also do tax adjustments for any VAT adjustments that need to get processed. Those normally happen at the time that you're doing a VAT return itself, but just so that you're aware of it. And then we've also got user-defined books that I will touch on in just a moment. Right, adjustments to close books. I've mentioned if you've closed the books, you would need to use the adjustment journal option. If you haven't closed the books, you can just use a straightforward journal, and you could set up a separate journal just called year-end journals to process those journals to keep them separate from your other journals. And you can run through from there. Let's go through and have a look at setting up specific journals and how we can process those through the system. In my general ledger, under setup, you'll see that I've got journals. So this is for setting up my standard journal codes, adjustment for setting up any adjustment journal codes. And then I've also got tax adjustment journals, user-defined journals that I can set up for pushing transactions through the system. Under my journals here, I have set up a code for year-end because I want to be able to process just a straightforward year-end journal. So I can use this journal code by going back to my journals, journal entries. I can process a new journal, select my year-end journal, and process a year-end journal. Now, the reason I'm going to use that code is I want to keep it separate from any other journals I'm processing through. But if the year was already closed, I wouldn't be able to use that journal. And what I would do is use my adjusting journal. So let's go and have a look at that. Under adjusting journals, in this case, I'm going to add a new journal. I've only got one journal code here. I can have multiple different journal codes set up in here. Here I've got one just called adjusting journals, and that will allow me to process that journal through the system. Okay, but bear in mind I can only use that where the period is closed. The other types of journal adjustments I've got are compliance and tax adjustments. So we've got compliance adjustments, as I said, where you want to do other sundry type compliance adjustings, say for gap accounting. And then also VAT adjustments. I'm not going to jump into those in great detail. They work exactly the same as the journals through the system. Bear in mind that the tax adjustment journals do not affect the general ledger directly, affect your, in this case, VAT return information, and compliance would only affect any reporting you're doing with those compliance journals included. I wanted to touch very briefly on user-defined books. You may or may not be aware of user-defined books in the system. Effectively, it's just another set of books that you can keep that you can either put on separately or you can combine with your normal or general ledger accounts to give you more effective reporting of other areas in the business that you may not normally need to keep track of. The one common area that gets used with user-defined books would be for commitment accounting. So if we're trying to keep track of outstanding purchase orders in the system, and we're tracking those as commitments, we'd set up a commitment user-defined book, and we'd set up user-defined journals to specifically cater for that. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like, if I go to my settings here, if I go to my general ledger, I do have user-defined books enabled. And if I go to my user-defined books, you'll see here I've got different types of user-defined books in the system, one for eliminations, allocations. We've got intercompany consolidations turned on in here, so we do have other types of books in there. But if I needed to process an elimination journal through, I can then set up under my user-defined journals an eliminations journal, and then based on that, I can go to my user-defined journal entries and create an elimination journal in here. So process an elimination journal as per normal. Now that information, as I said, does not get included with your normal general ledger information. It only gets included with any reporting that you're doing, whether it's financial reporting or any other standard reports you're doing out of your general ledger. If I was running a trial balance, for example, out of my general ledger, I can choose whether or not to include other books, and I can decide which books those should be, and whether I want to combine them with reporting with my normal general ledger accounts.